The Cartoonerific podcast is sponsored by the Wonderful World of Animation Gallery, home of rare and wonderful fine animation art. Visit their website at wwagallery.com. And for our Cartoonerific listeners, you will receive a special 10% discount off any purchase if you purchase by March 25th, 2024. Just go to wwagallery.com and enter code CARTOON10 for your 10% discount. Once again, this discount is only valid until midnight, March 25th, 2024. Once again, visit wwagallery.com.
The following is a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
Welcome to Cartoon Fun, it's Cartoonerific. Yeah! It's Cartoonerific. Cartoonerific. It's Cartoonerific. With your host, Brian Mitchell.
Well, welcome to the Cartoonerific podcast, Classic Animated Cartoons. I am Brian Mitchell, and I am the host of this show. You know, over the past 8 months of doing these podcasts, this is number 35. This is the 35th show we've done as part of the Cartoonerific podcast. We basically did interviews. We've done interviews with all these different people that have worked in the animation field. But one of the things that I wanted to do was some shows about reviewing some cartoons, actually talking about our favorite Looney Tunes or Disney, Fleischer, Terry Toons even, Hanna-Barbera cartoons, stuff like that. We've had people on, you know, within the conversations we've talked about, oh, we love this and we love that or whatever, but we've never had a show just devoted to our favorite cartoons. And so I think we're going to do a few shows like that in the future. If you have any ideas, please express that to me. Please email me, brian@cartoonerific.com. We'll take a look. And, you know, if there's a good idea there, you know, things that we should be looking at, please pass that on to us.
And now, it's time for Cartoonerific News.
Well, what do you know? We have been named as one of the top 50 animation podcasts out there. And it was FeedSpot that reviewed our show, and they thought it had excellent content. They really enjoyed the pacing of it. And so we have been named by FeedSpot as one of their top 50 animation podcasts, only after 8 months. So it's really nice to get that little honor. And we hope that you let your friends and groups that you interact with, please let them know about us. Very important. I know I say this on every show, but it's nice to be acknowledged once in a while by some major group letting us know that they really like what we're doing. So that's really kind of cool. Anyway, up next is a producer, director. He is an all-around nice guy, and I'm glad to call him a friend. His name is John Over. He's responsible for Clifford the Big Red Dog, One Saturday Morning for Disney and ABC, and Jakers. If you remember Jakers, these were PBS series. They were very well done. And but anyway, John Over is coming up next. Don't go away.
Cartoonerific is the place to be to celebrate hand-drawn animated cartoons. The Cartoonerific podcast features interviews with the magic makers behind your favorite animated cartoons, with episodes uploaded every Friday. Or visit the Cartoonerific blog featuring articles about classic cartoon animation. At the Cartoonerific Gallery, view original animation art and memorabilia from your favorite animated films and TV shows. The company store features exclusive swag from the Cartoonerific universe. And coming soon, brand new world premiere cartoons on the Cartoonerific channel. It's all here. Join the fun at www.cartoonerific.com. That's cartoon, ERIFIC.com. It's Cartoonerific, saving the universe one funny cartoon at a time. And now it's time for our special Cartoonerific guest.
Well, this gentleman got into the animation business by way of just a whim, really, because he was going to school for other things. And he just happened to try out for Warner Brothers. He got in, working as a cartoonist there and in Sherman Oaks, California. He ended up working on Tiny Toons and Animaniacs and a bunch of other things before moving on to help develop Disney's One Saturday Morning with ABC. And then later on, ended up becoming the producer and director of Clifford the Big Red Dog and Jakers, The Adventures of Piggley Winks. He is an Emmy Award-winning animator, and we welcome him here. Here now, Mr. John Over. Hey, John, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going well, Brian. Wow, that ovation's something else.
There you go.
Just let that go on. Just let that go on.
Yeah, pipe down, everybody.
What's a smile on my face? Yeah.
So,
good
John,
to see you.
Good to see you. So, I guess we should start at the beginning. Where'd you grow up?
First of all, let me before we get into me and all this, I just want to say I think this is a great venue for you. I for one, you got that rich voice. Something I've always been envious of because I always sound like somebody opening up a can of soup or something. That's my voice.
No, you don't.
but you have this deep, luxurious voice, and
it's velvety.
It is velvety,
just like macaroni and cheese.
There's the velvet fog.
Yes,
Mel Torme.
And then
there's the velvet cheese, Velveeta cheese.
Right. And I'm the cheesy host.
I saw that the joke was going there, so I pulled away. But no, something that's always so fun about you. You were always a very much kind of a focal point at Warner Brothers.
Oh no,
with all of us.
No,
you were always a kind of a touchstone because you had this combination of you were a funny guy, and then you pulled a lot of pranks on people.
Oh,
a lot on me, which I love, and I still tell people these stories.
I don't remember any of it.
Oh, you would drop your storyboard in a second to pull a joke on somebody, to cut out some offensive thing, and put it on the guy's light table or something.
Okay, I may have done something. I don't.
Yeah. And yet you had this fun side, but then you also have always, I think, enjoyed the medium itself, and you would always kind of bring a sense of history and deep appreciation for animation itself to conversations and to lunch rooms and stuff like that. So this is a perfect thing for you to be doing. I love it.
Well, thank you, John. I appreciate that.
Honored to be here.
And I will pay you later. Through PayPal.
Wow.
So thank you for that.
Yeah, just don't do it in crypto.
Didn't it crash?
Yeah, it's all in trouble.
Oh boy, here we go.
That's all right. I'm not invested in it, so I'm good. I can.
Yeah, but there goes my life savings.
Oh, good Lord.
I'll pick up the pieces later.
Yeah.
But anyway. So anyway, so tell us. I really want to know this because I kind of know it, but I don't. And you got to tell me. So where'd you grow up, and did you always? Well,
I grew up in a pack of dogs on the east side of LA, in the riverbed. No, I grew up in San Diego.
Right. With a pack of dogs.
With a pack of dogs. No, I grew up with a lovely family. Actually, I had one brother, older brother, and my mom and dad, and we grew up on a nice little, cleaver like Street in San Diego.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a good group of kids I grew up with. They're good guys.
Right.
But one thing that kind of got me, I'm always interested in why people do what they do.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever I'm at dinner with, animator or a cop or a priest or whatever it is, I'm always interested in how they got involved in what they're doing. And you get really funny answers about how people arrive at where they are. And for me, it was, especially in animation, you always get these guys. I was 6 years old watching Lady and the Tramp, and I knew that's what I want to do. It's like so many guys like that.
I was 4 and it was Jungle Book, but that's okay.
Okay, see, there we go. There we go. I mean, it's either Jungle Book or nobody says Aristocats, though.
I think Aristocats chase people away from the medium. I think people who were interested before, they saw the Aristocats, and then basically they said, okay.
Yeah, I think Joe Biden was going to be an animator, and then he saw that, and then now look what we got. So, so I would watch. I never liked animation. I always liked dramatic films. When I was a kid, I'd read Mad Magazine just to read about the R-rated movies. There'd be like Serpico or Clockwork Orange, and because I love that they weren't just silly themes; they were talking about real themes. So
it was real satire.
Yeah, it was real satire, and it was also those films you could get between the lines were actually trying to say something.
Right.
And I always appreciated that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was always, as a kid, trying to talk my way into Dog Day Afternoon and Deliverance and all these things. Maybe that's where my dad got that idea.
Right.
But I was going to say,
let's go and see Deliverance, a good family film.
I had no idea what was in it, and I was talking my parents into. I think I must have been like 11 years old, and I said, "Look, I'll just go by myself. I'm sure it's fine. It's just an adventure movie." And so they were actually going to let me go see Deliverance by myself. And my dad actually called the theater, and she says, "No, this is not something you want to take."
Did you have to take off the painted mustache?
Yes. Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
So I'm always interested in where people get it. So in my house, there was in all houses there's stress of some kind, and there was a little stress between my parents in a way. Mm-hmm. And I think that I look to cinema to escape that, and I think everybody looks to something, whether it be drugs or Pokemon or video games or something to kind of relieve where they are. And for me, that was film.
Right.
And so I was always making movies and drawing posters of movies. I was always outfitting my garage to be as much like a theater as possible. Then I'd show little, Ken films, little silent 12 minutes of a movie.
These are the Super 8 films. Yeah, I had those.
Yeah, except I would really experiment with like hanging curtains. So I had curtains on the side of the screen, and I'd put black felt around the reversed poster of The Godfather that I had up.
Do you have that now? Do you have that now in your house?
No, I can't. It's funny because there's something Spielberg once said, that he said he misses the days when to deliver a movie of his to the theater, it took 3 guys to carry it.
Yeah.
And the film had some consequence to it. There was it was a big thing, and you ran it through this projector, and then that somehow made its way across the movie theater onto a screen. And
right.
There's a bit of magic there.
Yeah.
And he said when that just became a video cassette that you could throw in the back of your car, he said it lost something, and I agree.
Well, you could throw it into a glove box.
Yeah.
Very easily.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gotten worse because now you can put it on a chip if you wanted to.
Well, it's on your phone. It's in your pocket all the time.
I know. No, it's yeah. It's
yeah. So
yeah, good. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, I was just gonna say it's. I grew up trying to mimic all these experiences of the theater, and I think the experience of the theater is a really interesting thing. Orson Welles once was on, I think it was Dick Cavett.
I was going to say Dick Cavett.
There you go.
We're on the same wavelength, man. I'm telling you.
He's often on there, and he was talking about the audience and how important the audience is to any piece of art, and theater obviously, and films, and how the audiences over the years have changed. And he went into this little thing about Shakespearean audiences were this way, and then through time the audiences. And now we have, at that time, it was still the 70s, I guess. He said, we have the least informed audience, now. They don't know how to be an audience in the same way.
Right.
Then especially now. I mean, if you looked at it now about how people watch a piece of art on the screen, they're always doing 3 different things while they're watching it.
Yeah, they're texting and eating popcorn or whatever, doing something else,
And I liken it, and you'll think it's nuts, but I liken it to a religious experience. There's something about going to a church or a temple or a mosque, someplace where it's a third party, it's an independent place, and you experience something, and then you go back to your daily life.
Right.
I think that's important, and I think that's a role that the theater used to fulfill. You think about growing up and going to that theater where you see all kinds of different movies, and then you come home to your own house.
Right.
So I used to try to mimic that at my house all the time. I did a drive-in where I parked cars in the garage and then put the projector on the roof and had, speakers, and it was just kind of fun. So
that's pretty neat. That's pretty neat. I think you're right. I just want to stop you. I think you're right about the experience, because if you go to a lot of these movie theaters in New York, these old movie theaters, they're just works of art. It's basically Art Deco, or it's all these engravings or carvings in the wood and stuff like that, and just sitting in the theater before the show begins is an experience by itself, and then the curtains go up, and then it's.
See, and you're right, and you've hit on it. That experience before the movie starts is that experience, like in a church, where you put yourself into a certain frame of mind before you sit down, and you're in a place to receive something new.
Right.
And when you're on the couch and you're eating dinner, or you got people calling you, and it's not the same. And so a really powerful moment easily slips by. I think it's a shame, because the theaters are just, and all these theaters in LA that were just, iconic. The
El Capitan, which Disney restored.
Yeah, the Cinerama Dome closed.
No.
All these ArcLight theaters closed. Yeah, they're closed.
Oh my God.
And I don't think they're coming back. Especially some of the ArcLight theaters are now, you see there's something else. They're a shoe place or something, and it's just sad. It really makes me depressed.
I was in Arizona last week, and I was there for a service, and driving back to the hotel, which was in downtown Phoenix, and there was a sign that said Los Angeles, like it was like 5 miles away, and I was so tempted to just turn off and go to Los Angeles and just check it out, because I haven't been there. I haven't been there in a while. I haven't been there since.
It's a different place, man. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It is not the same. I lived downtown for like 14 years.
Wow.
In a high rise down there. And I would live in those theaters along Broadway. The Orpheum. I was always at the Orpheum and the Palace, and some of these places that would only open up at certain times.
Right.
And I just loved them. And that experience just, it's gone away, but it's been replaced with something kind of new. Can I tell you about a fun movie-going experience I had just the other day?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
In Los Feliz, you probably remember, there's these little theaters up Vermont Avenue, and there are a bunch of little Los Feliz things, and they've been taken over by the American Cinematheque. So the American Cinematheque is a group that just shows a lot of kind of old movies and new movies and independent films. And so they had this horror festival, and I'm not a horror guy,
Right.
But they said, come, it's free. So just come and meet the filmmakers and discuss the film.
Wow. That's
and I
the
thought
ticket.
that's cool.
Yeah.
So I did it. So I went and here's this movie, and I'm watching the movie, and it was pretty good. But before that, these people come out and they're from Paris, and they said, "Yes, we're so happy to be here in Los Angeles. How you say? We're grateful. Yeah. And then they say, we'll talk about the movie afterwards, you know. And so you watch the movie, and then here they come up,
Right.
and it's the actor and the writer and the director and all this stuff. And in this film, they made a huge blunder. They had a really great suspenseful character, little piece of tension going.
Right.
And then at the last reel, they turn it into a comedy.
Okay.
It just ruined it. It was not a flat out comedy, but they just kind of went with a kind of an odd sort of funny take on the ending.
Right.
And so the questions afterwards were, you know, what happened? Did you have two scripts? What happened? And then they said, oh, you know, we so loved Jean-Pierre's little performance, was so astounding. You agree? So we just sort of let the movie become what it wanted to be.
Oh, there you go.
And then everybody was sort of disappointed. But what was great about that was everybody stayed, and for about an hour, we talked with these people about the characters, whether that was a good decision or not, all this stuff.
Right.
And it made it a really memorable cinema experience.
Right.
And that's like almost underground cinema. Maybe that's where cinema's going, where you get to be really upfront with the makers of it.
Right.
In a real direct way.
And tell them how much their film stunk.
And then they go and they make a better film. So anyway, you wouldn't recognize LA. It's very different than it used to be.
Yeah. Well, too bad.
Yeah. I think LA is, as Paul Trandle, a dear friend of ours, used to say.
Yes.
One of the advantages of living in a international city like Los Angeles is you get to experience cinema culture, which is rare in most cities around the world. And he'd talk about, you know, you have all these retro houses and stuff like that. And it's true. Those are still around, thank God.
Right.
But,
well, that's good. Around. That's good. So you really got into cinema, and that was a passion. And so you didn't pursue that. You didn't pursue that, though, as a career.
No. I didn't pursue it because my parents just didn't like that at all. They wanted me to be an engineer. So if they saw me drawing, it was like, Connor, be an engineer. You know, it's not me at all.
Right.
And so in school, like going all the way back to elementary school, I was always like writing skits and performing them and on stage and that stuff.
Yeah, that's what I was doing.
Is that really?
Yeah, I was doing that. I was writing skits and getting thrown off stage, and had somebody came out with a cream pie and hit me with it.
Well, tell me about that. How important was that for you as a kid to get up on stage and do that stuff?
I used to. I feel like the interview is being turned around here, but that's fine. No. When I was going to high school, I was really. What was I? Maybe 13 when Saturday Night Live came on. Yeah. When that premiered, and I always loved sketch comedy. I always loved like Carol Burnett, and I loved Lauren Hardy and Abbott and Costello and all that stuff. But I really liked sketch comedy, and I was very interested in Monty Python. I think before Saturday Night Live came on, they were actually showing the Monty Python shows from the late 60s on PBS in New York. And I just thought it was wild and wonderful. And so, I grew up on Soupy Sales, and he used to do all these sketches for his show in New York. He had a show on Channel 5 here in New York. And so that was always kind of in my background. I was kind of there, and I always loved sketch comedy. And I think that's something I probably would have ended up doing. But I love cartoons, and you could pretty much do the same thing. You know, they're like 6-minute shorts. They're like little sketches. You know,
Yeah.
So, and I had the ability to draw and stuff, and I was into puppetry too, but all that stuff kind of came together, and, and I went the other direction. But I was writing stuff, and we had a so-called radio station in our high school. And so I would write these sketches, and they would always be a little bit naughty, but also, a lot of tongue in cheek, and always making fun of somebody in the school, normally a teacher. So, so there was one day we were doing a sketch. It was me. I wrote it, and then I had a friend of mine, this guy named John Coben, and I would do the sketch. And so, so one day it just got way over the top, and they actually pulled the plug on us.
Whoa. Whoa.
Yeah. But we would hear, people would come up to me and they would say, "Oh, that was great. I loved it, man."
Yeah,
And,
that's great.
Yeah.
And to have the plug pulled on you is that even makes it more.
It's
You're an
validation.
outlaw.
It's validation. Yeah.
Especially at that period, man. That's street cred right there.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, yeah, I just think there's such value in, and I'm always looking at this with my own kids. Like, how much time do they actually get to get up on stage that way? I think you could do a YouTube video now where you dance or something, and get likes or whatever.
Right.
But it goes back to that audience. There was something about, like you said, people coming up to you, "Hey man, that was awesome. You did that."
Yeah.
And you take somebody like Stephen King talks about his sort of love for writing came about by the fact that he would go to these horror movies, and then he would write about the horror movie.
Mm-hmm.
He would write it in his own way in these little cheesy stapled pamphlets.
Right.
And people would buy them. He'd sell that at school the next week, and they'd see Pit and the Pendulum, I want to read that. And they'd read his grotesque, version of it. And then people would come up and tell him, "That was great. Write me another one."
Right.
And I had the same thing with, I don't know how this happened, but we had this thing in the elementary school where every other week we had a talent show.
Mm-hmm.
And I would get up there every other week with a new character, and people would react to it the next week,
Right.
"Oh, I love that guy," or "He sucked," or whatever.
Right.
But anyway, that stuff is kind of important. But my parents hated anything to do with the arts.
Right.
So it really kind of made me kind of listless about the future. And this is what's important.
Right.
Is don't let that happen to you. If there's something you really care about, then
Mm-hmm.
you have to forge on ahead, and you can make that happen, even if it's not practical. You can at least exercise it.
Well, you can find your way. I'm sure when Jim Henson came into doing puppets, I don't think he envisioned how big the Muppets would be later on. I don't.
Yeah.
Because he came from, I don't even know where he came from, Louisiana. I don't know. Somebody's going to correct me. But he wasn't from New York, or was it Maryland? I don't know. But he was performing the puppets, and then he ended up in New York, and he was doing stuff on the Today Show. And then he came up with the idea of doing commercials with the puppets. Mm. And his take, and if you've ever seen any of Henson's commercials, they're absolutely hysterical. He used to do the LaTroy Dragon, and they had this big Muppet, this walk-around character, and he'd go into a supermarket and just completely destroy the supermarket because he had this big tail, so every time he turned around, he knocked down this big display. And
that's great.
Yeah, so check those out. If, you should check it out, but people in the audience that are listening, they should check it out. They're very funny. They're in black and white. There's maybe about, 6 of them online. They could check it out.
That's awesome. And that flavor comes through, and it's the whole reason you brought it up, but that advertising flavor was what separated Sesame Street out with this, letters brought to you by, the show's brought to you by number B or whatever. And a lot of the bits had a ad flavor to them, which gave them a smartness that was, the opposite of the grandmother reading you a story or something. There was a smartness to it.
Right.
Really attractive. So,
well, you know what I think the secret of Sesame Street was, and we haven't even talked about your animation career, but this is all interesting. So this might be a two-parter, John.
Oh my God.
Oh my goodness gracious. No, the secret with Sesame Street was everything was short. I don't think there was anything that was over like a minute and a half on the show. And I mean, even the songs are short. So if a kid was getting bored by a segment, he knew that he didn't have to wait that long for another thing to come on. And normally all the stuff was very interesting, which would hold your attention. Then something else would come on, and that might be really great. And then the next thing might be a piece of animation. It was just a hodgepodge of different things. And it's almost like what people should be doing on YouTube today, which is these short pieces, these 2-3 minute things where
that's TikTok.
Yeah.
That's you're seeing somebody talk philosophy. I mean, here's my TikTok feed is always, philosophy, some kind of weird religious debate, some politics, art, and you're getting, like you say, it's this hodgepodge of stuff coming across.
Right.
But, has Sesame Street caught some hell for that later on, as they were kind of in this plan to expand out the sequences.
Right.
And then you just had these long kind of conversations on the stoop about racism or something.
or 10 minutes of Elmo, flailing. Yeah. And I don't know. They really went far off track. I think they really lost their way.
I agree.
And I think that was really all Henson, because when they brought Henson into it, he was doing some of those live action segments too. He was doing that. He was doing, I think, some animation even, and then he was doing, of course, all the puppets, and those were always the most interesting segments because they would have two of the actors together or whatever, and I don't think it was as engaging as like the puppet sequences or the animation. Everybody everybody did something for Sesame Street,
what you're bringing up is exactly like Monty Python and Flying Circus, is that it had that same feeling like, okay, I'm not really liking this domestic dispute sketch, but that in 2 minutes it's going to be something with John Cleese, or something. So it gives you that.
Yeah. True.
So my parents were against any kind of dive into this sort of stuff, and I was like writing musicals in middle school. I did a Christmas musical, and then in high school, I took I just want to stop you. This very much sounds like Kevin Bacon and Footloose. What? Well, wasn't it the same type of thing? They couldn't dance in the town, and It's kind of funny. I never looked at it that way.
You're the embodiment of Kevin Bacon and Footloose.
God, now I'm going to get a poster for my bedroom. But I've never seen Footloose. I've never seen it.
I've seen it, and
I've never seen it.
I don't think I want to see it again.
I can imagine.
They did a musical. They did a musical on Broadway. Footloose musical. Yeah. John Lithgow was All right. Okay.
There was this thing with that idea. Oh, in high school, I did I was in a multimedia class, and I did a documentary, and then that took third in the state. It was like this.
Wow.
A big deal. I interviewed. That was during the Iranian hostage situation, and I interviewed. I did a dramatic, there's like a dramatic reel of what happened. I had music and all this stuff and zooming, kind of a Ken Burns sort of thing.
Sure.
And then I interviewed one of the family members from one of the more kind of recognizable hostages.
Right.
And it was great. Didn't impress my parents at all. It was kind of like, all right. Yeah. Anyway, so what are you going to do with engineering?
Right.
What are you going to do for a living?
What is an engineer anyway? I keep thinking the railroad, like you're putting on that hat and you're getting up in the cab.
It's so far
I'm the
from an
engineer.
artist.
Yeah.
It's so far from an artist. You know, it's like my dad saw me drawing, so it's like, oh well, you'd love to draw, you know, undefinable little machine parts and have them all be this perfect scale.
Wow.
You know, no, I'm always drawing different characters and things. But so then I ended up going to school. First, I spent a little short time actually going to a Bible school where I was going to be a pastor. And then that's when I went down.
Are you Catholic or are you?
No. I wasn't raised anything. And then I got into this church in San Diego,
right,
in high school. That was it was great. It was great because it wasn't all about theology. That the pastor of that church was all about poor people. So it was about, let's go out. And we went down to Mexico, like every week. That church was in Mexico at orphanages.
Wow.
And so I would go on during the summers every week. I'd be down at, there was a lot of orphanages. There was the dump. People would live in the dump and we would wash them and build houses for them. I was at a leper colony at one point.
Yikes. How old were you at that time?
15, 14,
wow,
something in there.
Wow.
And it was the greatest experience. I was in convalescent homes every week for 4 hours. So that was my introduction to sort of Christianity, was this sort of working with real people. It wasn't a theological debate or whatever. So when I went to Biola, it was very, very, so I went down to Venezuela, down to the jungle. I lived there for like 4 months with this tribe of Yanomamo Indians.
And you ate it, and you had monkey for dinner.
Yeah, we used to eat monkeys and snakes and rats and stuff.
Yikes.
And we were in a war while I was down there.
Wow.
But all that made me question a lot of that. So when I came back, Christianity as it was not the same for me. So I ended up going to Cal State Fullerton to be a teacher, and I majored in biology.
Oh,
so
okay.
I'm doing that. And I even won an Apple scholarship that was going to pay for all my schooling. You know, I wrote something and okay.
Pretty
so
cool.
We're going to pay for all your schooling to be a teacher. And then I saw this cover. I was visiting my parents down in San Diego, and I saw this cover of Time magazine. It was Steven Spielberg talking about Tiny Toons, you know, and he was opening up a studio at Warner Brothers.
Right.
And I thought, God, if I don't do something with this creative side, I never will.
Right.
Because I knew teachers, and I know once you do that, you're busy and it's a whole life. So I said, I got to do something with this creative side. Otherwise, I'll always wonder.
Right.
So I took my notes from chemistry and I took them down to Warner Brothers and I started showing them to people. And I it was the weirdest thing because they were really blown away. It's like, wow, these are amazing. These are really great.
Wait. You said notes? You took notes?
These are like chemistry notes, and I would illustrate them. You know, like I have, you know, two guys arguing about this. It was kind of like a Sesame Street sort of way I would teach myself
right.
chemistry or math or whatever. So they was just covered in these drawings.
Wow.
I took that over to Warner Brothers. And they were blown away. And then it turns out they go, but this is the music division. You know, you got to get over to. So I ended up. I finally got my way into where I met you.
Right.
Into the tower down there in
the Sherman Oaks Galleria.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were just starting up Tiny Toons, and I got in primarily because they just needed people that could do that. And they gave me a storyboard test, and that I really enjoyed because you were acting out the characters. Then I got you know, my first job was as a layout artist. I had no idea what I was supposed to do. You know, I'm not making up a bit. I'm not animating it. I'm sort of in between that. I'm sort of just making sure it looks right based on the storyboard panel.
Right.
And that was confusing to me. And then finally I started, I did a bit that really kind of made Tom Ruger say, let's try him in boards. And I started boarding, and then it just took off from there.
Wait, okay, wait a minute. So you were in layout. Ken Boyer hired you, right?
Yes.
So you were hired into Ken Boyer's, and he was. We were talking with Tony Craig a few weeks ago.
Oh wow!
And Tony came in. He was green, but he came from Cal Arts, And
Tony was brilliant. Tony came in as far from green as far as talent goes. That guy could draw, and I was just always amazed at the sort of picture perfect versions of characters he put down first go.
Right.
I mean, he was always expressing, this is how you draw a collar, John. And then he'd like draw this perfect collar around the character. You know, it's like, oh my God, that looks perfect. He was a big Harvey Comics fan.
Yeah.
And always referenced those. But
yeah, and
yeah,
you know,
Ken
something
Boyer's
it was good. It was good reference for him. And yeah.
Solid drawing in those things.
Yeah,
but Ken Boyer was great because Ken Boyer was, I think, a brilliant director and storyboard artist and animator, but I think he was an outstanding teacher. He really wanted people to learn concepts about animation.
Yeah.
And I remember, you probably remember this too, when Tom, what was his name? The older guy,
Tom Ray.
Tom Ray.
Tom Ray was he was a Warner Brothers animator, and he was an in-betweener at MGM working on Tom and Jerry's.
Right. He worked on the Grinch.
He worked on the Grinch. He worked on all those Tom and Jerry, Chuck Jones cartoons. But before that, his name could be found on all those 50s Roadrunners and Bugs Bunnies. Done by Chuck Jones, yeah.
He once took my scene and a bunch of other people's scenes, layouts now, into Ken's office. And I remember overhearing it. And Ken was like, oh man, just here, animate this out. And you'd take it into him and go, oh no, I'll put some more poses, really get that. And then Tom Ray took this thing, the scene that I was really proud of. He took it into Ken. He goes, this is crap. Look at this. This isn't layout. These people are animating these scenes. We're paying animators. This is layout. They should just be, and Ken's like, yeah, but it looks good. And it's, that's when I thought, I got to get out of this layout thing because it's a whole different job. It's a different job. And that job was hanging by a thread anyway. Because
they were looking to get rid of the layout artists because we were unnecessary. Yeah. So I started doing storyboards, and that I subbed on a board for Jenny LaRue once. Right.
She could do half of it, and I did the other half or something. And it got a big reaction, and Tom called me up to his office. I thought I was getting fired. He's like, oh, this is wonderful. And he was very encouraging, and it was great. And that got me sort of storyboarding. And what was weird, Brian, was that my acting, because I didn't go to Cal Arts or Cal State Fullerton or Art Center,
right?
My acting it came from a different place.
Right.
I didn't have the sort of just make them shrug into the camera, and I didn't have all that.
You didn't have some. I hate to say it, but when everybody gets trained by the same people, they end up doing a lot of the same things. And I'm not saying that's always the case, but generally that's what happens. And and so I didn't know all these poses that you could just go into, and then great, you're done with that. That guy's good. You can focus on the other guys in the scene. Right.
I would always keep acting them in some weird way, and almost like being on stage.
Mm-hmm.
And that had a big reaction. Tom really liked that, and so I also think these and this is important.
The cinematic thing is coming back. Because you talk about how much you love cinema as you're growing up, and you're looking at all these different types of films, whatever, and you absorb that. And then when you're doing something like this, your head goes into that place, and you're storyboarding with that in mind, which is what Spielberg was looking for. See, exactly what Spielberg was looking for. He's looking for that cinematic quality.
See, now this is why you have the big microphone. Brian, this is why that's exactly right. Because
I can make a very dirty joke right now, but I'm not.
I was you're exactly right, because what's weird is as I'm sitting with that scene, because I watched those silent movies so often. I saw them each 150 times. Right. I understood movement. Like how a guy falls down, or how. Little timing of looks and things that really did run underneath all the time. And so I think you're exactly right about that.
Yeah, no, I can see that.
I got kicked in the balls with that once. and it was some of the best advice I ever got. It was Tom Ruger. I had a show. You might even remember this one. It was a show about a car wash. There's this monster being dragged through a car wash, and so
I don't remember it. I'm sorry, but
this is the era in which, for people that now kids, young people, they don't even understand. But we had to draw on paper, and it was just such a pain. You couldn't erase anything very easily. You had to start a new panel and cut it in. It was all this horrible stuff.
That's right.
And that was the age of the Chris Oatsky, like a felt pen.
Oh, that's right.
You would be doing.
Yeah.
And so everybody was writing with these felt pens. It gave you a thick and thin line, and it was all this stuff. But man, it was permanent. What you did was permanent.
Yeah.
So I was doing these drawings, and I was concentrating on the drawings, making them really funny.
Yeah.
And I get my notes back from Tom, and you remember what this looked like, the red writing, over the storyboard.
Yeah. Normally very big.
Yeah.
When
big.
he didn't like something, it was big.
Yes. And this board that I did, I was very proud of. It came back with one note. And I said, well, it's only one note, but it's a big one right on the front page. And then oh God, this is bad. No, it wasn't redo. It was better. He said, be a filmmaker, damn it. And
wow.
Oh man, that really was great, because I was being an illustrator. I was like, this is a funny drawing. That's a funny drawing. I wasn't using the camera. I wasn't using space. I wasn't using anything that I could use.
Right.
I was just concentrating on the drawing, and it changed me. I went, you know what? God, he's right. As soon as I saw it, he's right. And thank God we had the time to actually go back and redo a board in those days.
We did.
So I went back and I redid it, and then I got a really nice note, at the end of that. But it was a really great piece of advice, and it goes back to your comment on it is ultimately cinema, and you really are a filmmaker when you're a storyboard artist.
Yeah, you are. But I think everything, they talk about animators that are worldly. They travel all around. They see all these different things, and then they come back, and all that stuff gets somehow absorbed into the artwork.
Yes.
Even though, they might be doing something that takes place in downtown LA, all that stuff that they learn, they somehow absorb. And I feel like anything you do in life, before I actually got into animation, I was doing sales for electronics. And there are things about that you don't realize, but you take that with you, and you apply some of that to the business, So.
Yeah, you always drew VCRs in the back. There was always a VCR television on sale in the back of every panel. I thought you were in the adult film sales department. No, you're right. And what's kind of weird about that is that I always had a very ambitious streak in those early years at Warner Brothers. I think I was pitching shows within the first month I was there.
Wow.
And I knew nothing about the industry or anything like that, because ultimately I think I was a storyteller, and I wanted to tell different stories than what was going on, which is how funny can you make the pig walking up the stairs? That's kind of what our shows were doing a lot of. And at least as a board artist, that's what you were doing. And I thought, wow, there's so many other things. And then you got guys like Leonard Robinson showing us Miyazaki for the first time, and you're going, oh my God, yeah, there's more than Pete's Dragon to this stuff, and it really or Yaki Doodle,
Yaki Doodle Duck, a classic.
Yeah,
we're going to be offending somebody out there. I like Yankee Doodle Duck.
Yeah, well, the cute voice, I'll say.
No, nobody likes.
Yeah, well, it's weird that as I've gotten older and I've gone through more in life, then the stories you tell are much more interesting. And I think if I could say anything to any kind of wannabe filmmaker or new filmmaker, it would be those life experiences are important. A sense of curiosity in life is really important. if you're curious about life
Mhm.
and why things happen and how they happen, and it's just great. And the great story about Miyazaki is that he used to not go to work until like 12 o'clock.
Hmm.
And people would say, "What do you do in the morning?" Or, and he would say, I take in the world." So he would go out and sit in a coffee house, and he would, do little notes and stuff. But he would say, I'm listening to that couple having an argument, and
Mhm.
I'm looking at the price of beef, and I'm looking at how people are filling up their gas or whether they're not filling up the gas.
Right.
So he always said that was his period before he went into the studio to kind of absorb real life.
Mhm.
And that, like you say, would translate into the work.
Absolutely. I mean, animators pretty much, they do the same thing, but they're studying how somebody is moving in relation to emotion. And, and they're looking at how fast they're moving, and they're looking at the timing, and, how they cock the head and, arch the body, and they're looking at all that stuff. So, it's all observation from life, but it's in different degrees, I guess.
But it's so sad. Well, it's not sad, but it's inevitable. I mean, there was a Disney style of acting that I never really liked. It was that sort of Glenn Keane sort of, but it's just all these principles of animation being acted out.
Right.
And it sort of appeared hammy, at times. And then so we moved into this other form of acting that, and so much of it isn't that. There's I was working at a studio, I won't name it, but it was always running different shows that it had going on.
Right.
And the sad thing is you're seeing the same acting no matter what the show was or the scene.
Right.
You're seeing that same, "Oh, I'm a fan. Oh, really?" And then the eyebrow up and the thing, and we got to do this. And it was all the same poses, the same acting bits.
Right.
And you're thinking, these are different characters across different planets even, and different times. And yet they all have the exact same acting style. And that's something I really, I'm sorry. I was just going to throw it in.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
I really appreciate about Laika is if you see something like a movie I didn't want to see at all, which was Missing Link.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I saw the ads for that and thought, no way, I'm not going near that. I mean,
right.
And it's my favorite animated film now.
Wow.
Because to me, the acting in that thing, the art direction, it's just stellar.
Right.
And all that Hugh Jackman acting is phenomenal in that. And it's not like any other movie that's doing it. It's they're getting into that character, and that character in that period would move like this. So,
right. I see what you're talking about with like the Disney style of acting. There's a lot of broad stuff. There's also some very tender stuff too.
Yeah, there is. But I knew I'd get pushback on that from you. I knew it. But you're right. You're right.
That's good. I'm just thinking like it really depends on the animator too, because it's almost like some animators they kind of phone it in. It's not that it's a bad performance. It's just that you've seen it before, and everybody talks about Milt Kahl. And Milt Kahl was a brilliant animator. He was really good. He could come up with really inventive stuff, but he used to do the head wobble all the time, Mm-hmm. And so the character would be like, and the head would wobble, and then he would go into another pose, and then the head would wobble again, and,
Yes.
And you saw it so many times in these Disney films, and it's like, you almost feel like, well, yeah, he's, you kind of recognize that because the animator is doing the same thing all the time. You end up realizing, oh, that's Milt Kahl. And
yeah. Well, it's interesting. I forget the guy's name. You'll forgive me. That there's a British talk show, and Norton
Graham
Norton or Norton Graham.
Graham Norton.
Anyway,
Norton Graham. It's interchangeable.
There you go. Yeah,
he changes it every week.
He had on Tom Cruise and Seth MacFarlane.
Right.
And here you have two performers, and I have to say, I respect Tom Cruise in a big way for what he's done with all the stuff he does.
Sure.
But he was in awe of Seth MacFarlane and his ability to do different characters and to inhabit those characters with different voices and just at a fly, he's a different guy. He's a different guy. He's a different guy. He's a different guy. And that's something I don't think Tom Cruise is really able to do as easily. And that's important. It's a really important thing to know as an actor or an animator, to be able to make your characters feel like different people.
Yeah. It's very important.
Yeah.
It's very important. It's important, you know, as there, well, you know, you look at Bugs Bunny. Is there any other character out there that's like Bugs Bunny? I can't think of one.
No, and again, he started in a cliche kind of way,
Mm-hmm.
and then evolved into something that was really, you know, as you're saying, very unique, and really fit a niche.
Right.
And you know, there's a lot of characters like that even now that are out that, you know, you think, wow, that's a great character, and they really, you know, serve a purpose.
Right.
But yeah, so that's how I got started in it, and then it was just I started doing, you know, designing shows and then directing shows and
Wait, at Warner Brothers or
no, I used to get offered to direct at Warner Brothers, and I always turned it down because the only like happy director I knew was Alfred Gimeno, and the rest of them were all like like under the gun and like, you know, all just miserable. So I always thought, no, I don't want that.
right.
And I ended up going over to Disney with Peter Hastings and directing stuff over there. And so then I started winning Emmys and BAFTAs and stuff like that.
And that's the end of our interview. No.
There you are.
No. I gotta slow you down a little bit. Is that all right?
Yeah.
Okay. So you left Warner's. Did you just leave Warner's, or you had this offer?
I had an offer over at Disney, but it was weird. And some of this is a mistake of mine. There was a guy that had done a good guy, a wonderful guy, and he had done a drawing and kind of pitched an idea. It was an idea that they had going, and he pitched an idea about it. There was a couple people like this, and then they instantly got associate producer titles. And I remember thinking, wow, that's amazing. Because we used to know some of these people that had associate producer titles, and they would walk around. They never had deadlines exactly. They were just they had a big office and they had a big title, but they were just kind of helping you see the show. And I always thought, wow, that's what I want. So then when I started getting involved in a lot of the designs for some of these shows, I was always holding out for that associate producer title.
Sure.
The producer title. No, it was dumb. It was a wrong move because I think it was asking a little too much.
Right.
I should have taken the director thing.
Yeah.
And because there's so much I didn't understand. But what I really wanted to get to was shaping the show, not just how is that character holding that hand? You know, is it like this? Or is it like this? Or is it like this? You know, how is he on that panel? And then you got to do 100 other panels that day.
Right.
So, so then when I was offered the thing over at Disney, it was a really unique. So Warner's was great to me. It was really good. I got to do a lot. There was that thing with Joey doing
Joey Banaskowitz.
Yeah, Joey Banaskowitz, who's just a wonderful guy, and doing the World Cup mascot.
Oh yes, that's right. You and Joey Banaskowitz at Warner Brothers were pulled off some of the other work that we're doing. I don't think we were doing anything at the time. And we're just sitting around waiting for something to happen. Yeah. And I was twiddling my thumbs. But you were pulled off to work on the mascot for the international soccer.
Yeah, World Cup was coming to the World America.
Cup. Yes, to Los Angeles, right?
Yeah, it was like a thing where a bunch of people did different designs. And I had done a design that they liked. And a bunch of people, there's a bunch of versions and stuff. And for some reason, they selected my drawings and Joey's drawings. And Joey had this, we all called it Saki Bally, because he had this funny idea where it was the mascot would be a little soccer ball that the kid takes out to dinner with and all this stuff is a weird idea.
I think I said that's probably the one they're going to go with. They're going to go with the sake ball with big eyeballs or whatever and a mouth. And they? But that was a contender.
Actually, he also did some dog stuff, and it ended up being like my version and his version combined. And so we did some drawings, and a couple of them are very much Joey, and a couple of them are very much me.
Right.
And so in between. If
anybody of you out there hates that soccer dog character, you know that this gentleman here is responsible. I
kind of hate him because it was a weird thing because we were just drawing this thing and doing rough drawings. And then I remember I was on a plane somewhere and I picked up, USA Today, and there was a drawing of mine on the front page of USA Today out of my trash can. Do you remember the name? Was it Richard, the tall PA guy with the red hair? There was like a tall PA guy.
Richard Purcell.
Yeah.
Yes.
And he said, he pulled it. They said, you got to give us an image. We have to do a story on this design. So he actually pulled something out of my trash can that ended up on the cover of USA Today.
Holy
moly.
People
are making all these comments like, oh, the shorts aren't right. And the ears are... And it was something I threw away.
Right.
But we didn't have a lot of freedom with that. That was the first time I really came up against that design by committee thing.
Yeah.
Where it was a bunch of soccer people saying, like we'd draw him kicking the ball and his leg would go up, a really strong pose. And then you get this note like, no.
No, because because kids are going to be looking for the genitalia.
No, yeah, exactly. Well, Brian Mitchell's going to look for the. No, it's God. I never thought. Learn something about you every moment. No, they would say that a kid would injure himself if he kicked a ball that hard.
Oh God!
And so we had to do all these poses that were stiff and it just, I like his ear like this, and I like his ear like that. Now you get the drawing back, and have all these notes on it and stuff.
Right.
And it ends up looking very much like a Hanna-Barbera character.
Sure.
And
they kick all the life out of it. That's what happens. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's not.
Suck it.
But
suck it away.
It's a weird thing. It was a weird moment, Brian, because I remember before I got into animation when I was at Cal State Fullerton, and I'm walking down the aisle at Lucky's. And it was the cereal aisle. And I'm seeing all these boxes of cereal, and they all have these designs on them. And I thought, man, if I ever designed something that was on a cereal box, I could die and be happy. It would be the fulfillment of something you do.
You're thinking this, and then
I end up with the soccer thing. He's on every Snicker bar. He was on every Coke can. He was on the side of planes, and it meant nothing to me.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
You think it's going to be, you're going to feel that spreading out of your influence or something. No, you don't feel any of that. It didn't give me any satisfaction at all. And I thought that it really would be, but
because it wasn't truly yours. Right. I mean, you had the inspiration for it, but people just continued to suck the life out of it. It became a committee thing.
Yeah.
And it too calculated. So yeah.
And so it's that was kind of a big lesson.
Do you have any questions or comments about the podcast? Please email Brian at CARTOONERIFIC.com. Your email may be featured in one of our future shows.
Hey, well, that was a fun interview with John Over. I used to kid around with him over at Warner Brothers, and we had a lot of fun working on those shows and a lot of hijinks in between the actual work. But it's nice to catch up with him, and I hope you enjoyed it too. Well, I have to say that interview got a little bit off course, got away from me a little bit, but then we kind of reined it back in. But all that information is important information. It's all good information. So, I'm very fascinated by the way people get into the medium of animation, their thoughts, and how they approach things. So it's all very, very important. So I hope you got something out of it. Next week on the Cartoonerific podcast will be part 2 of the John Over interview. And I guarantee you this part was fun. The next part is equally as fun, maybe even more so. So please come back for that. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Cartoonerific podcast. So this way you keep up to date with all the new shows. And if you really love what you're listening to, please share that with a friend. Let them know about us. Very important to spread the word about the Cartoonerific podcast. So please do so. The company store is open and the Animation Art Gallery is open. And if you really want to support us, pick up a item from the company store or Animation Art Gallery, and it will help support us here. Anyway, I want to thank you all for tuning in. I want you to have a great day. I want you to have an excellent week. And thank you once again for listening. This is Brian. Have a good one now.
This has been a Cartoonerific Studios presentation.
The Cartoonerific podcast is copyright 2024 by Cartoonerific Studios Incorporated. All rights reserved.